start off with some. Wait for the next slide. There we go. Some introductions. So I have been with Nomios myself for over 18 months now, and have worked in our technical pre-sales team, so working with all of our clients, understanding their requirements across the networking and security side, and then have moved into more about our OT delivery, obviously the vendors we work with, such as Fortinet, and how we can work with some of our customers and hopefully customers in the future. And I'm joined by Ben.
Thank you very much, Chris. So good morning, everyone. I'm Ben White. I'm Fortinet's Operational Technology Business Development Manager for UK and Ireland. My background, I've been in operational technology since I left university, and I got into it by accident because I could draw pretty pictures on SCADA screens. So I've worked as an engineer, I've worked as a project program manager, worked in business development, and then I made a move into cybersecurity when I joined Emerson Automation, which are one of the largest distributed control system vendors in the globe. So I'm here today with Fortinet. I've been with them for over a year and a half now, and I work across the whole business and along with our partners in working to secure operational technology with our customers. So thank you for having me.
No, thank you, Ben. And we've had a chat, and this man does a lot of work in the OT space. He is a very busy man, so we're quite lucky to have him. Had to nail him down quite quickly to get him to come along. So thank you. So yeah, for anyone that's not heard of Nomios or not worked with us before, a little bit about us, I guess. So we are a group of companies, 8 countries in total across Europe. In the UK, we are about 79, 80 people. We are growing. I think when I joined 18 months ago, we were maybe at 60-ish. So we've grown a lot and we've got plans to keep growing. Hopefully a testament to how well we are doing. We're headquartered in France, in Paris. Beautiful office. I've been there myself, quite lucky to have been. We started our life as a networking partner for the SP service provider world, and then have gone from strength to strength, moved into the enterprise world, and also moved into the security world, where we work with a lot of strategic vendors in that space. We have a variety of enterprise customers across all different verticals. All of our account managers are verticalized. So whether it be legal, manufacturing, retail, logistics, energy, media, utilities, there is an account manager that can work with you, and an aligned solutions engineer. As a security company, we have the certifications that you'd hope we have. So we are Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus and ISO 27001 accredited. And in the UK, we do have a 24/7 UK-based NOC and SOC capabilities. We will cover this later, but it also can be an IT OT SOC. So we do have that ability to not only do an IT security center, but an OT one as well. And I guess Ben and I will talk about the benefits of that and different areas of security in the OT space. So the kind of the 3 pillars: security, networking, and automation within our business. Automation is more about your data center, kind of infrastructure as code, if anyone has come across that term before. And we can do solutioning, professional services, and managed services across all 3, whether it be that kind of exploration into a new product, or a new vendor, maybe a bake-off, maybe a proof of value or proof of concept, maybe looking at Fortinet, for instance, that I think we're going to come across later. We can do that kind of proof of concept with you, and help with the deployment and then managed services on top. All of that bottles down into the Nomios cybersecurity maturity curve, which is a journey that we take our customers on. So starting at the basics, whether it be firewalls, remote access, secure web gateway, email security, EDR, vulnerability management, or if it's in the more enhanced phase, and you can see kind of that IoT, OT acronym there, or other areas of networking and cybersecurity that we work with. And it's ultimately specific to each customer. So we're going to focus on OT, but it'd be remiss of me to not tell everyone about all the other areas we can do. And obviously partnering with Fortinet, they cover a lot of those solutions as well. So if you are very much a Fortinet customer already and you've got some other of their solutions, there are always benefits to to having a single fabric. And I think a member of Fortinet at the security day called it platformatization, I think was the word he used. So again, there are some benefits. But our, I guess, approach to security and cybersecurity for OT as a business, first of all, is addressing the need that, you know, OT is different from IT. It needs to be thought about slightly differently, and has different security concerns. So making sure that, you know, various board members, plant managers, security managers are on board, gaining visibility into the network and the assets on that network, identifying if there's any nasty surprises, hopefully not, but if there are against your governance and risk, how do we address those, before moving towards the end of that 6-step phase to integrating, understanding, working with the IT team, maybe a CISO, to give them that information and kind of keep them off the backs of the OT world, before looking at a kind of a long-term plan. So yeah, just a bit of a sheep dip into the world of Nomios. So what I will do is allow Ben to take over the screen and start to tell us a bit more about Fortinet.
I'm not sure yet though, Chris, but I don't think we have a 40 sheep dip. We have a lot of 40 products, but I don't think we have a 40 sheep dip.
I mean, it could be the next big thing. I should patent it.
Yeah. I'm sure though it's probably already patented. So morning again, everyone. So I'm just going to minimize the screen so I can get a full screen for the presentation. So today I've got a secure talks for you, talking about secure operational technology and having a discussion around that. So as Chris mentioned, please feel free at any point in time to raise any questions. Chris is going to monitor that for me as I am currently stuck on one screen. So Chris, at any point in time, if there is a question, please feel free to jump in. But what I wanted to do, a very quick intro around Fortinet and who knows Fortinet. So I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands or answer yes, but it's always good to start with explaining who we are and very high level what it is that we are doing. So Fortinet being one of the largest cybersecurity companies in the world, having a global customer base of over 750,000 customers and over greater than 50% of firewalls shipped globally. Founded in October 2000 and founded by two brothers, Michael and Kenji, and we're headquartered in Sunnyvale, California, and we are a global company. And to touch on the bit when you yourself, Chris, did your intro around Nomios, we have a very tight relationship from operational technology with Nomios over in Europe. So we know that this is a strong partnership to be able to take us forward as a partner and a OEM vendor. So let's get into what we do now, Fortinet, for operational technology, industrial Internet of Things, and edge security. So one of the say blessings and a curse for Fortinet, we have a very broad platform, but over 50 plus tightly integrated product lines, focused on 3 pillars around secure networking, which is firewalling, wireless and wired LAN, 5G, operational technology security, and network access control. Then looking at things like unified SASE as a pillar, where we've got SD-WAN, we've got single vendor SASE, zero trust network access, cloud firewalling, and then looking at security operations, so SIEM, SOAR, EDR, XDR, deception technology, as you've talked about. That platform, everybody predominantly knows us around our enterprise cybersecurity. But when we look at that and we look at the OT security platform, this is what extends the enterprise. So it takes the enterprise level class security that you're accustomed with and brings it down into the industrial environment for factories, plants, buildings, remote locations, the shop floor effectively. Very simple architecture here. On the left-hand side is a Purdue reference. Not saying that is the perfect Purdue reference. However, the Purdue model is used as a reference architecture to try and explain the full levels of a network. So we can see on the bottom of the screen, we have cyber physical systems. We then have a convergence between IT and OT, and we have enterprise and cloud technology. So if you look in the center of the screen, when we look at secure networking, we look at, we look at our rugged form factor switches, firewalls, APs, and extenders. We look at zero trust, we look at 40 clients, network access control, privileged access management, zero trust network access. We look in security operations. We can look at analyzer, SOAR technology, privileged access management, SIEM, Deceptor, and NDR. We look at AI-powered threat intelligence, and we look at what Fortinet have from an OT and IoT service along with our FortiGuard services. And then we look at the ecosystem. So we know that customers across operational technology do not have that one platform fit, and they have existing investments that they have made, not just in technology vendors for the process and the making of the product, but also for security solutions, where you could look at the likes of Armis, Clarity, Dragos, Nozomi for the asset identification, threat vulnerability management. I believe as well as the partner, Nomios, you have some of those partnerships as well, Chris. Is that correct?
Yeah, we do, Ben. So we work really closely with the likes of Armis, Clarity, Nozomi for that reason, so that we can kind of partner the two technologies together. They obviously understand all of the protocols. They can look at the vulnerabilities, the end of life, the traffic that's going on that network, and then pass all of that over to you guys to help with the different products and intertwine it all together. So yeah, we're happy to do demos on those. As I said, really good partners with those three.
Again, another reason why those partnerships between vendor and the actual the doer are very strong for us. So when we look at what we have across here, I'm not going to go into the ins and outs of each product today. I'm going to use products that we offer to try and explain situations and best practice within operational technology. So as you can see here, we have solutions across zero trust, secure networking, security operations, the subscription services, and an ecosystem. What they look like in OT, networking, production sensitivity, joint security operations center, the protocols or the specific information that is being passed through those networks, and then making sure that we are OT aware. So we have spent the last 20 years evolving continually to do research and development, and we will continue to do that as long as the company exists to maintain a full Purdue model offering. So before we go any further, let's talk about some of the industry issues that we're seeing. So Fortinet do a lot of research, get a lot of threat intelligence, and also we listen to the customers that we work with. And by doing that, what we're able to see are some not unique, but some common technology challenges. And I just want to discuss those with you. Some of the common industry challenges that we're seeing is that most of the industrial control systems that are there and installed to date lack security by design and are very sensitive to change. And what I mean by that is I can explain it in two very simple ways. We have brownfield and we have greenfield. A brownfield site has been there for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. It has control systems of differing shapes, sizes, and flavors, and it has networks of differing shapes, sizes, and flavors with differing technologies, but also even differing physical connectivity. It might be RS-232, 485, DH+. It could even be very simple Ethernet connectivity, even fiber in some instances. So when we talk about most industrial control systems lacking security by design, it is the fact that when they initially were put in, there was no security requirement associated to what they need to do. And if you were to take potentially a power station, and I was talking to a power station earlier this week, originally back not even a long time ago when I first started, so talking just up to 20 years ago, coal-fired power stations were looking at having something like an FGD built, which is fluid gas desulfurization process, added on to their coal-fired power stations to remove NOx and SOx out of their exhaust fumes. This process was a new process added onto an existing control system, and even then, up to 20 years ago, that didn't have security requirements in. What it would have had is put antivirus on a machine, make sure it has the latest signature files applied, and then add the latest Windows patch that is available at this time, and leave it running untouched for 12 months in a settling phase. That was the level of security requirements only up to 20 years ago. And the more we've progressed, the more we've seen, but systems have evolved, have adopted, and have changed, and we're now trying to apply cybersecurity across all of that industrial control system, not just individual bits. attack surface specific cyber physical assets is expanding, and that dependence on a air gap protection has diminished. Air gap was a term used not so long ago, but it was used as the main defense. We are not connected to anything. But by not being connected doesn't mean that you are not intermittently connected. So customers still used engineering laptops that were able to connect to the internet, then disconnect, then go and connect into an OT environment, and that was a temporary connection. So there is not, in my opinion, there isn't really an air gap protection. It is just that you are not permanently connected. There is some form of connection, it just isn't permanent. And when you look at that attack surface, you can then look at the challenges on the next two, is why that attack surface is expanding. Businesses are looking at things like Industry 4.0, digital transformation. They're looking at driving IT/OT network convergence because they're identifying that the data in the environment operational technology has is very rich, very useful, and if they can access it and use it, they can perform or inform and make changes on the business and improve how they are working. You look at increased adoption of new technologies. So businesses now are looking at mobile private networks in manufacturing facilities. They're looking at IoT sensors to be able to install into their processes without having the additional cost of putting cables and wires in, having to take plant down to be able to add these new sensors in. And most of those IoT sensors then come with a cloud native platform that data can go and be consolidated into. They then want to take that cloud data, bring it into the business, either add it into an existing SCADA system or bring it into maybe Power BI dashboards. Then we look at remote access requirements for third parties. So if you look at fast moving consumer goods or you look at food and bev and manufacturing, they have a lot of remote access requirements because of the support contracts that they have with vendors such as Sidal, Crohn's, who are providing the process to be able to make, fill and cap bottles to be able to make alcohol or soft drinks. They then obviously have very stringent uptimes and quality requirements, and they have those remote access requirements to maintain that performance and that level of operation on their facilities. And then as well, asset owners' reliance on OEMs and SIs exposes those critical systems to additional risk. And I can talk from evidence and experience in this, having worked for an OEM for Emerson Automation. When I have worked with customers, only two versions of a system are supported at once. You're looking at adopting cybersecurity. You want to look at the technologies that are out there, get best of breed and best of fit for your environment. But is it tried, tested, and supported by that OEM? Is it going to impact something for you? So I do not envy customers who have to take on these risks and these issues, look at solutions and put best endeavors in place to be able to mitigate them. But what I do and what Fortinet do is we try to help to protect those environments without impacting those environments for customers, but by also allowing them to enable digital transformation and then increased adoption of new technologies, and then securing those remote access without impacting production uptime. It does sound like you have, very simplistically, there are two connections. There is your main connection, and then a third-party supplier needs to maintain a connection to their system that is your system to perform maintenance or monitoring capabilities, maybe for a predictive maintenance solution that they're offering. And now you have two entry points, and like you say, if you take on board something like the NIST2 that is saying you have to be able to encrypt, log, monitor, and also react on that, that is something we probably want to have a look at outside of this. I have a couple of ideas, but obviously this is where we try to work with those OEM vendors to allow them to offer solutions that can mitigate risk to customers, but also still allow them to provide a service. So you could potentially say that you could allow that connection, but put requirements onto them that they have to evidence that they can meet a security level 1 connectivity requirements, or like come into a security level 1 environment without impacting that. So there are ways that we could talk about that after this if you would like.
Okay, yeah, no, I appreciate that.
Yep.
Would a secure remote access solution offer anything there, Ben? I'm thinking, moving away from like a permanent VPN and having a controllable remote access method that would tick the box for the OEM?
Yes, but I'm always hesitant to go straight into solutionizing until I understand the full problem. I try to try to act like a doctor. I don't want to prescribe without knowing the full issue first or understanding the full problem. So things like secure remote access, privileged access management, network segmentation, reducing the attack surface, least privilege access, what data do they need rather than what data we are going to give them access to. There are a lot of things that you can look at to try and not negate their need for access, but mitigate what they are accessing. So if you would say they've got a firewall, you could then go, right, can that firewall support something like a VLAN? So could we just isolate them? Then can we put a profile on that VLAN so that they can only access what they need to access, and then give them a like a 40 token or a client or something along those lines, so that they're authenticated coming into that environment and they are negated from lateral movement through existing technology that we've already implemented. So we've not limited what they want to do, and we're not breach of any contracts, etc., but we have mitigated the risk to what is reasonably practicable.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you very much, Thomas, for your question.
Yes, thank you. Any more in this time? Chris?
No, I'm all good, thank
Okay.
you. I think just
Okay.
the points you raised were really valid, and just some of the areas obviously we're seeing in terms of challenges, like change or adopt newer technologies or even adopt more cybersecurity. It's things like planning the downtime, the maintenance windows. So having a vendor that understands those limitations and kind of builds them into solutions really helpful.
Yep. And I'll be brutally honest, even vendors who live and breathe OT still struggle to understand those industry challenges. And I know that because I used to work for I worked for a global vendor, and we would plan to do work on a site when the customer didn't have an outage for a year. And it's like, we need to talk, we need to communicate, we need to understand timescales. This is how long something would take. When is the best time to do it? Or can we package it up and wait until we need to do something like reboot a machine when the machine can be reboot, not just doing it when an operator's sat in front of it and then he starts pulling out his hair because my screen's just gone off. Okay, so if we look at some of the industry challenges, and these are specific, most, probably 9, 8 out of 10 customers when we speak to them start to talk about defensible networks, looking at that segmentation, looking at the best practice around segmenting IT from OT and OT from IT. And the reason why I say that is, if you were to look at your network, there is a lot of implicit trust between these two networks, but actually, should there be? Should we start to treat IT as an external zone, and should IT start to treat operational technology as an external zone? One of the best practices dictates that SCADA systems should only communicate up and down one level in the Purdue model if required. So it is required. So a SCADA system and a PLC can be on the same network, but they can also be separated, where PLCs could be on level 1 and the SCADA system on level 2. And therefore, that's when we look at it passing up. But best practice, we would not put the SCADA system for control into an IT environment. We might put a view-only screen into the IT environment, but we would not want to take and jump multiple levels of connectivity by putting a control system or a SCADA system in that environment. So it should not talk or connect directly with systems and users on a corporate network, in my opinion. We look at microsegmentation. Flat networks are most commonly seen within OT environments, and that was because we were providing connectivity, not security. So you are trying to provide multiple points of interconnectivity, and then obviously that breeds proliferation, exploitation potential. So SCADA networks are most commonly seen or installed with unmanaged star or bus network configurations. And as I said, when we start to, and I gave the example around a power station, when we look at the power station and for the 40 years it had been creating energy and passing that out, we now have to add on something like an FGD. Back in the day, that was an extension of that process. It was not then treated like it was a completely new system that needs to be separated and segmented. It needs to be connected because it becomes a part of that process. So that's how the flat networks have just expanded over time. It's about giving connectivity rather than giving security and connectivity. And then one more we look at is industry challenges around securing access, around that remote access into operational technology, which is kind of what we were talking about just from, apologies if I got the name wrong, Thomas. So industry faces that difficulty in standardizing and deploying secure remote access across critical and operational assets. So good example then, and he beat me to it, you've got third parties, so contractors, supply chains who want to access OT estates to perform things like maintenance activities. You've also got engineers who are requiring to perform those maintenance activities on site as well, or those engineers requiring access to see what that third party are doing. And some of the issues we find with that are you've got agents that require installing, you've got multi-factor authentication being required, or you've got additional cybersecurity measures being required because customers are looking at things like defense in depth. So you put multi-factor authentication onto a workstation environment. That workstation has predominantly been known as an open workstation that everybody can access and everybody can view the process from. You're now putting a level of multi-factor authentication on. Users are not going to like that. They are going to find a way around it and they are going to keep it on there. If you look at additional cybersecurity measures in order to implement something like multi-factor authentication, customer might then say, well, we want to put whitelisting into an environment, we might want to put ADR into an environment. These then might require things like shutdowns. So actually you are delaying the ability to deliver something like an MFA or a remote access solution because you can't apply another risk mitigation. So you can't actually get what you want. So when we look at that, we look at things like FortiSRA, looking at that remote access, how we can manage, how we can utilize SRA technology through existing investment, and also how you can do that without having an agent installed in that environment. And if you look at operational technology as well, it does have its own issues. So you touched on it earlier on, Chris, when you were talking about the Nomios maturity journey. Fortinet have a very similar cybersecurity maturity journey, and we look at that around being based on NIST, ARC, 62443, looking at how customers can start to evolve their cybersecurity. That is a challenge in itself because customers can be at different stages, customers can be right at the start, but they need to meet requirements like what our attendee just said, NIST2, and that's coming, and we need to be showing that we're doing it. Critical national infrastructure might be wanting to show that they're ECAF compliant. How are we going to do that? How are we going to show it every time we have to do this assessment every year and show a process? That is a maturity model. That is an evolution. Having a methodology that shows you where you are and where you are going and how that is going to mitigate risk at the point in time you are and as you progress and manage that. But they have business issues, they have resource, and that can be focused around humans. The owners of these assets have limited resources, and they are the ones who either need to upskill on that new tech or subjects. They need to transfer those skills now into new areas, or they need to support other complex projects that are going on, or they need to go out and recruit SMEs that we all know are very highly in demand. They also have technology. And a lot of customers don't want to fix what isn't broken, become the guinea pig, be the first to be attacked, and be impacted by their day-to-day operations or impacting their day-to-day operations. You've also got complexity. So you've got the resource around humans again. You've got customers have needs and demands for SOC integration, design assurance. You have technology that customers have projects but are not experts in, things like digital transformation, energy optimization, or the new initiatives, solar and EV, that they're being asked to bring into these existing networks. How are we going to connect them in securely? How are we going to use the protocols? How are we going to be able to monitor threats in those environments? And then talking about environments, they have those specific environments that require differing form factors from what IT are used to, who are telling them that these are the best firewalls out in the market, those are the ones you should be using. So that's where things like form factor, that environmental need comes in. And that's not just being IP rated around making sure that something's splash and dust proof, it hasn't got a fan in it. It's also making sure that it has the right power connectivity. Before I move on, Chris, how's time? And are there any more questions or anything from yourself?
No, I think time. I think we're running really well. Still got plenty,
Okay.
so crack on. And I think all the things you've seen is what we're seeing as well in the industry with the clients we're working with, as I said, whether it be skill set in OT or IT, cybersecurity, I think there seems to be quite a large gap in skilled people in the sector. So yeah, hence I imagine people are going to try to use the skill set if you have a security mindset from IT, trying to leverage that in OT. But as we know, it's not as easy as it seems because of the differing environments and the differing requirements.
Yeah, and you probably just don't have any PPE to be able to go in that environment as well.
That and you probably don't have any. I mean, yeah.
So one of the things that I've, for the audience anyway, one of the things that I tried to do today is not focus heavily on one particular industry and using them as operational technology examples. So I know I've talked about coal-fired power stations and how they adopted fluid gas desulfurization. But as I've gone through this, I've tried to use different operational technology that people might not be as familiar with or might not associate to operational technology. So in this section, the risk to you, I've looked at with the audience, you have potentially designers and owners, and I wanted to use the example of building controls or building automation. So I hope whenever we go out and we see new buildings being built, new hospitals being built, skyscrapers, or as I found out at the weekend, something called a ground scraper now, which is where skyscrapers are being inverted and built into things like quarries, which are being classed as ground scrapers. These are all being driven by control systems and IoT, and these systems, new and buildings, new and old, are insecure by design, or cybersecurity is not being fully focused and factored in to that environment. So on the left-hand side here, you can see a very simple overview of a 3-story building, but you can see all of the connectivity that it is inside that building. You have a heating, ventilation, an air conditioning system. You can have rooftop solar systems. You can have smart meters. You can have power plants, connectivity coming in, so it's a smart grid. You can have dynamic windows. You could have EV charging or battery storage in that environment. And then you have the building automation systems for the lift access, the CCTV, the access control. All of these, when you look on the right-hand side, you can look at a building management solution that integrates OT and IT. So across the top half of that architecture, you can see that you have an industrial control system. You then have a configuration laptop. You then potentially have server cabinets and switching. You have fire alarm systems, lighting controls, and you have a backbone of they could be on HTTPS and BACnet. That's going out to switches that are managed or unmanaged, going out to all different types of devices that are controlling different aspects. And this is what is historic within our building or within our buildings. And what we look at then is, what do these attack areas look like? So when you look at building controls and services, this is what a lift can look like. This is what the commercial boiling system can look like. Power systems, air handling units, building management systems, HVAC. These are very common building control systems on building services that are offered. But then what do we do when we put these into a certain setting? So would an air handling system in a building office be as critical as an air handling system in a hospital? What do you think, Chris?
I would suggest not. I think probably you might need more clean, sterile air for a hospital than just an office.
Yeah, that is correct. So that's why I wanted to have a look at now the risk and looking at these between an owner and a designer. So as an owner, understanding and mitigating risk is an everyday function of the business. So what we are asking, or what the industry is asking you to do, is nothing different than what you're already doing. And that is understanding risk to your business and looking at putting mitigation factors in place. So when you look at the commercial boiler system, you've probably already done a risk assessment on that if the boiler systems go down and they're compromised, you're going to have no hot water for your guests, your cleaning, or your kitchen. You'll have a mitigation plan in place then if that happens. But that is a risk to service. That is the same risk if it is compromised through a cybersecurity incident. So these risks that we've already assessed and understood are associated to cyber as well. It'll see the same impact, the same output. It is then how your business is going to handle it and how you're going to look to mitigate this new risk or attack vector or risk area to the business, which is cybersecurity. From a designer's point of view, so a designer is always understanding mitigating risk. It's a primary function of project delivery. And as a project manager and a program manager, I used to have to do this, but I also have to do issue management. So cybersecurity risk mitigation, again, is no different to project risk mitigation. So we talked about air handling just, Chris, but if you look at HVAC, building management systems, and air handling, for heating, ventilation, automation control, is this a critical service to the business function? So if it's a life sciences customer, yes. Hospitality, probably not so much. The room gets hot, somebody gets upset. Life sciences, if this is feeding air into clean rooms, you have the potential for it to be compromised, which could compromise what is being put into those vials in those clean rooms. So as a designer, you want to focus on where business function or the process is more critical and how the systems that interact and control that are being averted from risk around cybersecurity. Building management system, you've got it's interconnected to multiple other building automation controls. So example is the building management systems interface with the switchgear and the generators. Therefore, is it a single point of failure, but also is it a single point of attack into both switchgear and generators? So I wanted then to give another understanding around IoT and OT and look at it in retail. So how, to me, Internet of Things and operational technology in retail interact and integrate with your IT systems and compliance. So a lot of businesses have some form of compliance towards GDPR. Pretty much everybody will have it. But if you look at the Internet of Things and you look at a service around retail, which is click and collect, within this environment, is GDPR extended into OT? Are we aware that GDPR could be impacted by IoT and OT? So the examples here was on the left-hand side, you have a customer either in store or via the app, they make a purchase, they make an order to come and collect. That goes into a custom ERP system, which contains their personalized data, which means it falls under GDPR. That custom ERP goes to a shopping assistant or to the marketing data to be able to, if they've enrolled, send them personalized information. That shopping assistant then, either locally in the store, will go and pick those items up and pass it on to someone to be able to send that to the customer, or they will come and collect it. So that data in the customer ERP that is primarily hosted in IT will fall into other areas around IoT to be able to influence or to deliver the service to that customer. On an OT pick and pack, or brick and click is probably is most commonly known in the industry, again, GDPR. You have customers making orders through the app, going through cloud, going into an ERP. That ERP is then taking the data, taking the order, putting it into a warehouse management system. That warehouse management system then needs to issue out that order, and in some instances it might send it to an automated goods vehicle. So it issues a command, sends the data of what's needed to that automated goods vehicle. It will go and collect what the customer has ordered, bring it back to a point that might then be interacted to by a supplier, but at this point in time that order then has to go through potentially a print and label approach by being bagged and having the customer's data put onto that label that then goes out to the Royal Post, to the Royal Mail, might go out to Yodel, whoever is providing the third-party logistics. So that data that you own of that customers is going around your system quite quickly, and can you ensure the data is secure and is safe in every layer of your network? So then we want to have a look at best practice for OT designers and owners. So how do we start to understand cybersecurity risk? So in my opinion, and what I've looked at since I started on cybersecurity over 6 years ago, it is to look at performing a review around people, process, and technology. And the easiest analogy I can put this is it's a milking stool. You have three pillars on the stool. If you kick one away, the stool will fall over. So if you don't focus on people, process, and technology will fall down. So you need to look at people, process, and technology. So in the people part, review the existing organizational countermeasures you have within the people in the organization, the training, and your supply chain. Assessment, process, look at standard adherence, policies and procedures, cybersecurity management system if you've got one, risk assessments if you've got them, products and technology, look at your existing technical countermeasures, the versions that you've got, the vulnerabilities that are potentially there and how you could mitigate them now without doing much, but those that you will need to invest in to mitigate, and then those existing systems that you got. And this isn't a one-shot task. This will be something that you have to do and you have to keep doing. So it will become a business as usual function. Talking about standards, and one that is close to my heart and that I have been on some of the workshops for and also done the training for, is you have something like IEC 62443, which is an industry de facto standard on OT cybersecurity. And the reason why this is probably leading the way is it's been written by industry peers for their industry. It's an agnostic standard, so it doesn't tell you to go out and put a Siemens PLC everywhere or a Fortinet firewall. It tells you the what to do, not the who to do it with. So it's a series, so it talks around and focuses on the duties of people like asset owner, manufacturers and maintenance providers. The series covers 4 key pillars, so it gives you general guidance, it gives you focus on policy and procedures, a system guidance on how to assign security risk and assess it and then implement the mitigation, and then it looks at components of that life cycle around manufacturers building things and how they can evidence cybersecurity requirements to you. But also 62443 can support quantifying posture and maturity. So I touched on this as an example earlier on when we looked at risk or looked at like those services to as an owner and a designer. So on a posture, it will ask you to go and look at existing things that you've got. And as a part of the risk assessment process, by going and looking at those, you can start to follow things like the system under consideration. So you can understand the boundary of where your network is and your operational technology. You can then straight away, if you've already done existing process hazard analysis or risk assessments, where you've seen that there's a risk to service if you lose the hot water in a hotel, you can then bring those in to perform a very initial risk assessment. So understanding whether this is a high, medium or a low, the impact to service, the impact to safety and so on. And then also with standards and best practices, policies that are there, supplier guidelines, you can start to look at how you could partition this whole system into zones, whether they be physical due to the building footprint or logical because of the process of what you are doing. The output of that is it shows you your maturity. It can show you that you've got an updated system architecture. It can show that you've got an initial evaluation of risk, and it can also show you that you've got an initial or a revised understanding of what the zone and the conduits between your systems look like. It will also help you to achieve a security level. So you can take your posture and maturity and you can think, is that acceptable to where we are? And then you can start to look at going into achieving or identifying a security level target, doing a more detailed risk assessment and going, you know what, is this target acceptable to us? Are we willing to accept this level of risk? And if it's not, then go and create and perform a detailed risk assessment. And that's where I talked about understanding those threats, looking at those threats and keep going through them and going, right, what do we need to do to remove this threat? Are we happy now that that threat has been mitigated to what is reasonably practicable? Yes. Well, let's document that and then let's go back into the business now and start to change and remove that risk. So then what best practice in reality looks like, and again, if we go down the route of owner and designer, if you're looking at a scoping phase of a project as an owner, you want to look at secure by design. You want to look at developing cybersecurity requirements as part of that scope. If you're a designer or you're a upgrade or you're an integrator or a partner, you're wanting to ask the questions why cyber isn't included. As part of your due diligence, we want to make sure that you understand you have not applied any cybersecurity requirements to this, so there is no risk that you think there is going to be cybersecurity applied to it. In the delivery phase, as an owner, ask to be shown how the system will be delivered securely. So ask them, are you going to put any temporary passwords into my system? When you initially install Windows, do you install it as administrator with a administrator password? There was a lot of systems I built a long time ago when we were installing Windows 2000 that were administrator. Windows 2000 was the password. So I know that those things can happen as you progress and you build through systems. So there are ways that we can mitigate that as an owner right at the start of the build and the testing phase. And as a designer, you now can start to ask and discuss about those best practices. So if you've got them, and Nomios have, you can start to show and evidence how you securely deliver projects. You're not just delivering security, you are delivering it securely. And then on the handover, so you can start to evidence the requirements to the deliverables for your security that you wanted achieved. And then for the designer, you can evidence the security, the training for the owner, and the lifecycle cadence. And then we're coming to the end now, which I think is probably just bang on time. I wanted to give a bit of an overview around defense in depth. So if you go to 62443 and look at section 3, defense in depth is given a provision of multiple security protections, especially in layers with the intent to delay, if not prevent. And that's what we are trying to do. We are trying to delay, and we are trying to then be able to respond to that impact that we are having. Defense in depth, again, is focused around people, process, and technologies. So if you look at the benefits of defense in depth, it's going a term that's implying layers of security. And I've given a couple of examples here. So as we started earlier on, you can look at things like north-south segmentation. You can look at micro segmentation, east-west, and start to see how that is now going to put in those layers of mitigating proliferation up and down, east, side to side. But you can also then start to see that actually you can start to isolate areas that if you do get infection or you get an attack in a certain area, you can protect others by isolating that attack vector. You can then also look at things like very quickly putting in network access control and doing that profiling and identification on the network, so that you can start to build a type of zero trust architecture by profiling devices rather than trying to do a lot of other aspects. So you could have, as an example here, a hospital need to identify what is on the network. They need visibility to leverage what and where devices are. So building management systems, HVACs, to understand more about their estate. So not saying that by putting in a solution like network access control is going to give you all of the information, but you can start to profile the devices and put them into different VLAN technology and look at how they are profiled. So if they change, you can quarantine them automatically, rather than actually waiting for the change and then seeing an issue. So coming to the end now, what we want to do is develop and use indicators of good practice. So some of the good practice or indicators of good practice, look at within the business if we have a cybersecurity management system. And if we do have it, usually you have an information management system. And if you've got that, look at, does it extend into the operational technology environment? If it doesn't, can we create an addendum? Can we use this document now to see what is good and bring that into OT to start the journey? Then start to look at risk assessment, look at understanding what is in that environment, the system under consideration, how we're going to mitigate risk, what we are already doing to mitigate risk, and is that enough for the risk that we're willing to accept? Look at adopting a defense in depth approach. Look at clearly defining IT and OT networks and assets. Then let's clearly define roles and responsibilities of resources. Let's look at mapping our system's dependencies. Let's categorize the importance of your system to the business. One of the key things in the 62443 risk assessment is understanding the impact the industrial automated control system makes to the business. And then finally, let's involve OT and IT throughout that security maturity journey, because we're better together than we are apart and fighting each other. And then with the last slide now, I just wanted to talk around or end on the challenge on how to deliver the business benefits. And obviously every business, when they make an investment, are looking for a benefit to be realized from it. And it's very difficult in operational technology to evidence a return on investment that is a tangible asset, and we are getting better at it, and the solutions are providing that, because we're able to identify now with newer solutions and the adoption of things like AI that the business benefit is we don't have to go and employ an additional 20 threat analysts to keep monitoring our networks. We can use this technology to actually provide evidence and output to the existing teams without having to increase them. So that's where the benefit is coming. But other areas are Compliance is made easier. We can remove the ghost in the machines, networks, and devices, and we can understand and assign risk. So if anything today, and you get a chance to talk to a CISO, or you get a chance to talk to anybody higher up, ask them a question, and maybe one of these. So are we struggling with evidencing, tracking, auditing compliance for GDPR, or is a critical national infrastructure within our disparate and complex network? See what their answer is. Maybe with the removing the ghost, do you think we're confident in our malware ransomware strategy? And do you think it was designed for like a converged IT, OT, Internet of Things, and bring your own device network? And then finally, you could ask around, does the business know who owns the total risk of the whole of this network? You know, the converged IT, OT, Internet of Things, and bring your own device network. And see what those questions provide, well, what that answer is that comes back to you. And you might see that the business needs to start thinking about what we've discussed today, especially with an OT. So thank you for listening to me. I know I've gone on for quite a bit, but we've got 5 minutes left. And thank you, Nomios, for letting me.
No, thank you, Ben. If anyone has any questions at this point, please feel free to type them or put your hand up. I think your last point about go and speak to a CISO, they're not scary people, although they probably have quite a serious job in terms of risk and compliance. But yeah, everyone is seeing this convergence, not just in the network between IT and OT, but the people. Everyone has to work as one team. You know, in the IT world, we have been talking about cybersecurity and risk from a cyber perspective for a long time. And although it's still very new to the OT world, it's something that we need to be talking about more and talking to kind of help each other, as opposed to you're causing me a problem, or are you going to cause me a problem? So I think it's definitely.
If you asked one of those questions to a CISO, the scariest thing could be they go, well, what are your thoughts?
Yeah.
And you've just started a conversation with your CISO, which isn't a bad thing, because then you can express it from a point of knowledge and experience, which means OT will get listened to. OT then have the ear now of the person who is owning the total risk in the business and needs to listen to people to understand what they need to do and how they need to do it.
Yeah, definitely. I think something else that came along, someone internally was asking about the Purdy model, and obviously, it's been around since the 1990s. I think the year I was born, and there's a lot of blogs and talks about, with the way the world is going, Industry 4.0. Is it still relevant? Do we need to update it? What are your thoughts on, this kind of structure and design that we've been using for years?
It's a reference architecture. It's a model. It's not thou shalt deliver an architecture to it. So my opinion is it helps an audience understand a network very simplistically, and and one of the things that I felt very passionate about it within OT is you have a lot of intelligent people in their fields in that environment. The last thing I want is to make you feel like an idiot, because then you're not going to talk to me. You're not going to come with the ideas or the knowledge of that environment to be able to give the best solution. Using something that very simply puts 5 levels on a screen or on a board, and then puts devices that they know in those levels and explains where they are and what they're doing and why we're not. It just makes it a very, very simple way of getting people talking who don't want to show that they don't know something, because everybody wants to be seen as knowledgeable, and to put something up where I'm more knowledgeable than you're not going to get the kind of investment and response that you want. So I think as using it's a great tool as long as people know what it is being used for. And I think that, in my opinion, that is one of the LinkedIn forums and all those kind of things where people are making out that it's being used as this is the architecture model we should all adopt. No, this is a reference model. Yeah.
I just thought I'd get your thoughts on it, because I know it's always a talking point, and it's quite interesting to hear. So
I have wrote out LinkedIn posts before and then gone delete, because I'm not getting into this argument.
And then Barry has asked if we can share the slides. I mean, I don't see why not. I'm sure the slides that you've gone through today are publicly available. Otherwise, I'm not sure why you were showing them. And the recording will be shared and made available to anyone that wants it as well, if anyone on here would like it. So if there aren't any other questions, I'll say thank you very much for Ben for joining. and Fortinet for supporting us and the Nomios relationship as we do going forward. And thank you to everyone that joined for taking an hour out of your day. I'm sure you're all very busy and got your eyes on Friday. So thank you very much. And hopefully you will hear from Nomios and Fortinet soon.
Yep. Thank you all. Thank you very much, Nomios.